Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was a sequel that was anxiously awaited by everyone in the soon-to-be franchise. However, the final release was not quite expected. It was a staggering jump in all departments on the first installment. It was an influx of just a lot more. More lore, more mechanics, and most importantly of all, many more animatronics. I solely believe that the new roster of characters was the most overwhelming aspect of the game for both new and returning players. From the very first night, slowly moving from camera to camera and seeing just how many nightmares awaited your future was nerve-wracking. It was a unique experience on its own. Quantity doesn't equal to quality though. It's impossible to just shove 50 animatronics into one game and have it work Nope, no, we're not talking about you today. That's a completely different ballgame in itself. Anywho, even if you're able to successfully come up with a purpose and story to all 50 possessed robots, chances are they won't be very memorable. Despite this, I bet all you watching can name at least 9 out of the 10 main animatronics present in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. You may be asking though, what makes this roster different from the ones we'd end up getting in the future? Sister Location's custom night had the same amount, and don't even try and tell me you can name all the 10 animatronics there. Even if you're MatPat, you'd still hesitate. My point is, FNAF 2 designs are so iconic that you could identify who it was based on the silhouette alone. This isn't just Scott's creative side though. We all know how his designs can be both a hit or miss. I want to dive deeper into the psychology of what makes this cast work. For that, I'll divide the group into the obvious, the withered and the toys. Without further ado, let's start off with the withered. This is a simple concept and one oversaturated within the indie world. The idea of taking something you're familiar with and distorting it into a monstrous shadow of itself. We see this happen in Bendy and the Ink Machine, Poppy Playtime, Cuphead, and so many more. How this idea plays in with FNAF 2 is the layers to this concept. We already have the premise of Chuck E. Cheese styled animatronics being utilized to their area potential in the original FNAF. These mascots are portrayed as the antagonists that hunt you down and try and make you like one of them, with the underlying themes of child murder and subsequent possession hinted at. The main game was crucial in familiarizing us with the concept and the main four, alongside the ever elusive Golden Freddy. That's where most games would have stopped, twisting and contorting what we recognize from our childhood and leaving it there. FNAF 2 just takes it to a whole new level. By the end of the first game and its overall launch into stardom, the cast became memorable in its own right. Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy fermented themselves in the indie scene, and it was impossible to shake the thought of the then terrifying jump scares from your minds. And what does Scott do? Make them even more terrifying by showing what would happen if neglect and decay were to mix with these beloved faces. It didn't matter that people weren't aware it was a prequel at the time. They didn't need to. Bonnie's missing face, Chica's torn off limbs, and the disfigured appearances of Freddy and Foxy were all it took to let people know that the creep factor just jumped a level or two. It took what was already established and bent it with the heat of hell even further and gave us the spawns of Satan himself. And it worked. Just look at this. You already had Bonnie as such a compelling design with the lifeless husk of a suit alongside the dreary colors and eyes, and you just amp it up tenfold. It was pure genius from Scott's side, and the two games' designs only complemented each other. This wasn't all up Scott's sleeve though. Like the Min 4? Well, how about 2 of them? And throw in this balloon kid and stringed puppet in for good measure too. Now, the toy animatronics are a special case since each individual one has its own charm and science behind it. Balloon Boy was always meant to be, and still is, a nuisance. From his voice to his mechanic, there's no doubting that, so we can just dump him in the never to be mentioned again corner. Oddly enough, that is what makes him stand out in the long run. Moving forward, we have Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie. Yes, I am saving you know who for last. Freddy and Bonnie are caricatures of how a simplified version of the FNAF 1 design would look. They're humorous at best, yet memorable all the same. Not because of any one key detail, but just because of how out of place this seemed in the franchise by that point. Sometimes the way to be remembered is to just look out of place. Whether that be for better or for worse is for the fans to decide. Chica though. I can't say for sure what Scott may have been thinking. The only benefit I could see is how it would clear up the genders of the animatronics because of course it would. Intentionally or not, Scott sure did ensure that this version of Chica would not be forgotten anytime soon. Questionable modeling aside, I personally believe the heart and soul of the toy animatronics reside with one of them in particular, that one being none other than the Mangle. Similar to how I mentioned before regarding how sometimes it's best to just step out of the box to be noticed. Mangle sure took one big leap out of it. Everything about them just works. It resembles the other toys enough to be categorized in that roster, yet it is so uniquely different that an aura of intrigue and mystery is forged around them. From the second head to the dog-like design to the very obviously broken appearance, it's just one hit after another. It's everything both the toys and the wizards did right combined into one. Pair that with the likeness to Foxy, yet the continuous strides away from him, that you have yourself a character that is to be talked about for ages to come. When it comes to scary design, a lot of people forget that it isn't just about looking cool or scary. Sometimes not even unique. The main point needed to come across to your audience is if it paints a story without the use of words or lore. Take a look at almost any character from FNAF 2. Each design has something to say. Each design has a past, a history, a truth untold. Just going off of my previous sentence alone, I bet there's one animatronic that stands out among the rest. That's right, none other than Henry's daughter herself. Aside from the key points I just mentioned above, there's one other reason that allows both the puppet as well as Golden Freddy to be elevated to such great rankings within the sea of Freddy's this franchise has come to present. It all comes down to the story. The first game already set up Freddy to be something much greater and more than what met the eye. The second game only expanded upon the concept with the pre-night cutscenes and post-night minigames. Each one of them shed some higher beam of importance to these two. Scott quite literally just shone a spotlight on them and yelled out, "Hey, these two? Oh, they're of significance." And sometimes, that's all that's really needed, to be honest. Like, if the creator themselves is highlighting them, scene after scene, minigame after minigame, surely you're bound to catch on as well, especially if you're like MatPat and want to piece the story together. So, wrapping this up, it's a short story, but a simple one. It's a combination of elements from one's story, from one's past, and from one's reimagining of that past that make the FNAF 2 cast so memorable. It's the diversity, it's not one theme, it's things that don't necessarily match together but sometimes do. It's chaos at its finest. It's chaos in a way that's digestible because it's so unique and something that we didn't expect yet connects back to what we know. It's a sense of familiarity that allowed us to remember them, but at the same time it's a sense of loss and pure confusion that allows us to be more intrigued than before. It's perfect. It's balanced and it's how it should be, and it's the best way that Scott could have gone in creating a design roster for the sequel. Had he gone with something else entirely or just a smaller cast, I don't think they would have been as memorable, especially if it was just one over the other. The Wizards would have just been classified as the older animatronics. Toy versions alone wouldn't have been met with much great criticism since they were just too big of a leap to be there on their own. It's the fact that it's paired together that makes it so great, and it's the fact that they're together that make them so memorable.